Hello. Today's topic is going to be about letters and in particular business letters. So the first thing that you want to keep track of is the format. So whatever the content of the letter is, there are very few business standards to follow regarding the way it looks. Business letters should be typed and composed in a conservative common font, such as New Times Roman, and it can be fancy and use maybe Helvetica or mirrored, but New Times Roman is usually like the common thing. And then it's also good to employ paragraphing. So this means that you start a new paragraph by hitting return twice and don't use indenting for block paragraphs. So it's usually good to use 1-inch margins on the sides, and if the letter is to be emailed, it should still be composed in the same font and then attached. So depending on the business, some people are now getting very creative. They use colors, they use different scripts, but it's good to just keep it to just black and white in a business email, unless if it's like an advertisement. Secondly, it's good to choose the right kind of paper. The data should be printed on 8.5 by 11, and this is commonly known as the letter size. So basically, the way you write your essays is the same size that you would use. Most people who live outside North America might use A4 paper. For some lengthy contracts, they may be printed on 8.5 by 14. It's sometimes called the legal size in Microsoft Word. So if you're printing this letter to send, consider putting the letter on company letterhead. This lends it to a more professional air and provides your company's logo and contact information. So as you listen to this preparation video, just think of what your imaginary company will be, because in class you're going to actually create a logo and write a letter and send it out to me, but you're going to write it as a company. Yeah, so think about a company name. It could be a name, it could be your grandkid's name, it could be your friend's name, it could be your son's name or your wife, anything. Just make sure it's unique and create a logo for it. Thirdly, you'll have to include information about the company. So once you already know the name, then you'll come up with an address. So with each part of the address, it's written on a different line. So if you're self-employed or an independent contractor, you just add your name either in place of the company name or above it. If your company has a pre-designed letterhead, you can use this instead of typing out your company and address. If you're typing out the address, it should appear either on the right or left justified as the top of the page, depending on you and your company's preference. If you're sending the letter to an international location, then type out the country in capital letters. One thing that people usually forget is the date. Yes, most people might say this is outdated, but if your aim is to be professional and you're sending out something that's of value, or pitching in an idea, or you're writing to a company, it's good to include the date. So writing out the full date is the most professional choice. And this should appear like justified a few lines below the sender's address. So if you wrote your letter several days ago, use the date that you finished the letter. For example, if you crafted your draft on Monday, you revised it on Tuesday, on Thursday, you edited and maybe took out parts, and then You wanted to send it out on Friday. So it means the date that should be Friday because it's the date that you're sending out your letter. So don't put Monday. So basically, like how you do your essay, you might start your essay maybe on 20th, say April, and then you finish it on June. So the date on your essay will be June 1st because it's the day that you completed that essay. Next, it's important to add the recipient's information. So you write out the recipient's full name, title, if applicable, company name and address in that order with each piece of information on a separate line. If necessary, include a reference number. The recipient's information should be left justified a few lines below the date. So it's best to address the letter to a specific person. This way, an actual person will be able to respond to your letter. If you don't know the person or the name of the person in charge, you could say to whom it may concern, or you could try to do a little more research or call a company and find out the person's name instead of just adding on the title. Next, you choose a salutation. So salutations are very important because they indicate respect and and they also indicate the tone with which the person should use as they read. So it's also good because it puts you on a formality level of relationship. Instead of just saying hi, so and so, blah blah blah. Those things sometimes may not be the right ones to use unless if you know this person on a day-to-day basis. You may also use the recipient's title and last name. For example, if the person and a PhD, if the person is maybe a teacher or an administrator. So if you don't know the recipient that well, you can just say, dear sir, if you know that it's a he, and dear madam, if you know that it's a lady. And if you're not sure, you could say dear sir or madam, because this is a safe choice, since you know that some people can have names, but they may have gone through gender transformation because it's the current trend and you don't want them to feel offended. So if you know the recipient that well and enjoy an informal relationship with him or her, you may consider using their first name in the address, like dear Sister Magdalene or dear Magdalene if you know me that well. So if you're unsure of the recipient's gender, just say dear and then put the name. Or you could put sir or madam. And don't forget the comma after the salutation or a colon after, like if you're to put a title to whom it may concern. So it's very important, even if you're at loggerheads with a company, or even if you're trying to complain about something, it's good to always mind the tone of your letter, because the tone helps the person understand you, and if it's maybe a conflict, it can be resolved peacefully and with great joy. So that it's a win-win on both sides, because when you set the tone and keep it brief and professional, you make the letter easy to read, and the person is able to dive straight and is able to understand what's going on without feeling stressed. So don't concern yourself with flowery transitions or big words or lengthy, and don't meander because it's business, you know. So your intent should communicate what needs to be said as quickly and cleanly as possible. So you also want to be persuasive. So even if you're the one in the wrong, you might offer an incentive, or your tone, if you don't have an incentive, at least your tone should mimic something that's persuasive. Most likely the purposes of the letter is to persuade the leader to do something or change their mind or correct a problem or send money or take action. So whichever case it is, it's good to always strike the right tone. So it's very intriguing that most people, when they are doing or writing personal letters, they usually use personal pronouns like I, you, and like. And the reader also sometimes refers to themselves as I, you, and you. But it's important to be aware that if you're writing on behalf of the company, it should be we, because otherwise you might say, I am responsible for this. Yes, you might be the one in charge. You might have been the one who maybe made a mistake, or the one in charge of managerial roles, or you might be the leader, but because you don't want to be sued alone in case things go bad, and due to the fact that you're representing the company, we is usually like a safe word. And the we just helps the reader to know that the company is standing behind your statement. So even if you're writing your own opinion, because you're using company products, you're using a company logo, the we keeps you safe. So the other thing is to be keen on conciseness. So you always want to write clearly and be concise. So let the reader know exactly what you're trying to say. Your reader will only respond quickly if your meaning is crystal clear. The other thing that most people forget is the active voice. So it's very important to use the active voice when describing a situation or making a request. Make sure that choices are active rather than passive. The passive voice can make your writing ambiguous and impersonal. And in addition to that, active voice is more streamlined and straight to the point. The other trick, if you want to capture your reader's attention, is to be conversational when appropriate. Of course, it's business, and some people really want to get straight to the point, and we talked about conciseness. But remember, letters are read by people. They ain't robots. As in, some companies do have robots that do that, but still, there is a person behind that wants to feel, respond, wants to be engaged with your letter. So you cannot build a relationship with a canned impersonal letter. However, stay away from colloquial language or slang such as, you know, I mean, I wanna. Keep the tone business-like, but be friendly and helpful. So like we said earlier on, if you know the recipient well, it's fine to include a friendly line sending good wishes, maybe I wish you a good day, maybe have a wonderful summer, things like that. So use your judgment when determining how much personality to reveal. Sometimes adding a little humor is actually helpful in a business setting, but still you have to be conscious because some things that may sound to be a joke on your side may not be a joke on the other person's side. So even if you're writing with a complaint or concern, you always have to be conscious. Consider the recipient's position and offer to do whatever they can to resolve, and be accommodative and helpful. So basically, you want to make sure that they are satisfied and you and your company are also satisfied. And then the other thing is about the page number. or the subsequent pages. So if you're writing many pages, you want to include the recipient's name and date on every page. But that's very rare for a person to write maybe 2 to 3 lines, unless if you're like explaining like the policies within the company, or if you're or maybe if it's a business plan that's attached to a letter. But usually it's not a whole lot. So as you conclude in the last paragraph, it's good to summarize the points and clearly outline either your planned course of action or the purpose that you already wrote in the first sentences. And note that the recipient may contact you with questions or concerns, and then you just end with a thank you for his or her attention or for taking the matter at hand. So most people usually choose a closing salutation, which is an indicator of respect and of course formality, because that's what a business letter is all about. Otherwise, you could always just call and say, hey, I want this and this, but if you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to type this letter and send it to this and this company, so you always want to have a formal closing. So you could say cordially, so and so, respectfully, so and so, with regards, yours truly. And then you could go slightly less formal again, depending on the relationship or the prior conversations that you have with the business partner or with the recipient of the letter. You could say, if you want to be less formal, you could say all the best wishes, warm regards, or just a thank you. And don't forget to use a comma after closing when you sign your letter. So it's good to leave about 4 lines empty for your signature, but again, this depends on the content that you have. So after you sign the letter and maybe printed it, or you could sign it and send it via email, you could also scan images of the signature, like if you're typing and you don't want to print and then scan and then send it. There are different apps that you could use, like DocSign, PDF editor, and the like. So if you're signing the letter on behalf of someone, then it's good to write PP before your signature, which stands for like pre-corporationing, which means like agency on behalf of. And then lastly, you include your type name and contact. Beneath the signature, you type your name, title, phone number, email address, and any other applicable means of contact. So you just make sure you give each piece of information its own name. So there might be situations that maybe you have an assistant, but it's actually you who is meant to write the letter, but then you've assigned it to an assistant. So in such cases, if someone other than the writer typed out the letter, you should add this person's initials below the signature block. Because if that person made an error, you could say, oh, it's my assistant who did this, because it was actually supposed to be you, but because you have an assistant who is supposed to write for you on behalf of you, then that assistant should put the initials. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it depends on the purpose of the letter and how important it is. So if you include the writer's initials, put these in uppercase with the typist's initials in the lowercase. Some styles add a slash between the 2 sets of initials, just to show the reader or the recipient that it was maybe from the manager, but the manager assigned their assistant to write the letter. So if you're going to enclose additional documents for the recipient to review, note this in a few lines beneath your contact info by noting the number of documents, so that if there is a document missing, they can always get back to you and say, hey, you told me 3 documents, but I only got 2 documents. So if you're sending this letter via email, and maybe you're sending it to many people, you could put the blind copy option so that they each don't know that they have received the copy. If they are all aware, say you're sending it out to maybe shareholders and they already know themselves, then you can always just put CC, so that they know that so and so got a copy and this has a copy. And if you're just a manager and the breeze, a leader or a president, you might want to have the rest of the people in the blind steam, and then copy the president on all those people so that they know that you have the support of the company. So really it depends on your role, because you might be the overall person in the company, and then other times you might need a backing up. Okay, that's it for today. We'll see you in class. Bye-bye.